The woman on the phone thanked me for coming in that morning. That was how it started. Not with shouting, not with a missing wallet, not with some stranger kicking in my door. Just a polite voice from Maple Ridge Credit Union asking whether I had any questions about the commercial equipment loan I had guaranteed for my son-in-law. I was standing in my garage with a socket wrench in one hand and the hood of my old truck propped open. The radio was playing low. My coffee had gone cold on the workbench. It was a normal Tuesday, the kind of normal day that makes a bad sentence feel even more violent. Retirement had made my mornings smaller, but not weaker. I liked the order of them. Check the mail. Fix what could be fixed. Call Lila if I had not heard from her in a few days. Keep my accounts balanced to the penny, because a man who spent 40 years maintaining county roads learns that small cracks become sinkholes when nobody marks them. "Ma'am," I said, "I think you have the wrong Harold Bennett." She paused. Paper moved near her receiver. Date of birth, March 4th, 1959. Yes. Last four of Social Security ending in 7718. My hand tightened around the wrench. "I'm not answering any more questions until you tell me what this is." Her voice changed then. Not frightened, exactly. Professional people have ways of sounding calm while a red light starts blinking behind their eyes. "Mr. Bennett, this is Denise Rowe in Fraud Review. I am calling because the loan officer's note says you appeared in person at 9:18 a.m. to confirm personal guarantor consent." I looked at the grease under my fingernails, then at the truck that had not started since breakfast. I have not been inside Maple Ridge Credit Union in 4 years. The silence on the line became its own document. "Do you know Grant Mercer?" she asked. I closed my eyes. Grant was my son-in-law. He drove too fast, smiled too easily, and spoke about his hauling business like the world owed him equipment before he had earned work. My daughter Lila loved him in the stubborn way people love someone they have already defended too many times. I had tried to like him for her sake. We call it patience because the harsher word would make us feel less generous. "He's married to my daughter," I said. "The application lists you as personal guarantor for Mercer Hauling, LLC. I did not guarantee anything. Another pause, more paper. "Then we need you to come in." I set the wrench down carefully, because if I dropped it, the sound might have made me feel less steady than I was trying to be. "Did money go out?" "Not yet," Denise said. "The file is on review hold." Not yet. Those two words held the morning together. They meant the door had not fully closed. They meant whatever had been done with my name still had paper around it, and paper could be challenged. A withdrawn dollar is one kind of wound. A pending document is another, but at least it is still breathing. Then she said the sentence that made the whole garage tilt. "The branch note says you signed in person." I called Lila before I drove to the credit union. That was my first mistake. Or maybe it was just the first thing a father does. When your child's name is attached to a problem, you reach for the child before you reach for the paperwork, even when the paperwork is probably more honest. Lila had always been the one I could reach. When she was little, she called from school if a lunchbox zipper broke. When she was grown, she called less, but I still believed my number meant shelter. That belief was sitting in my hand. With the phone about to learn, it had become more complicated. She answered on the fourth ring. "Dad, I'm at work." "Did Grant ask me to guarantee an equipment loan?" The question took the air out of the call. "What?" "Maple Ridge says I came in this morning and confirmed a guarantor form for his company." There was movement on her end, a door closing, her voice dropping. "Grant said you two talked." My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with age. "When?" "Last week he said you didn't want me worrying about it." I stared at the truck engine like it could explain my daughter to me. "Lila, I did not talk to Grant about any loan." She did not answer right away. In that small silence, I could hear what she was choosing between. Her father on one side, her husband on the other. The truth somewhere under both of us, waiting to see who would step on it first. That she said carefully, "Are you sure you didn't forget?" That hurt worse than the credit union call. I am 67. I forget why I walked into rooms sometimes. I forget where I put a pair of reading glasses while they are sitting on my head. But I do not forget promising my name to a loan. There are questions that sound gentle and still cut. She was not accusing me outright. That almost made it worse. She was leaving a door open for me to be the problem, because that door was easier than opening the one marked Grant. "I am sure. Grant told me you wanted to help quietly." There it was. The sentence families use when they want secrecy to sound like kindness. Did he put that in writing? She sighed, frustrated now. Not cruel. Frightened people often dress fear as frustration because it looks stronger. He texted me after the meeting. Send it. Dad, this is embarrassing. Then send the embarrassment. The message arrived a minute later. Harold signed. Do not make it a big thing. He said he knows what family means. I read it twice. Family. People love that word when they need your boundaries to feel selfish. I'm going to Maple Ridge, I told her. Please don't start something before I talk to him. Something already started, I said. I am going to find out who signed my name. She whispered my name, then not Dad, but Harold, as if distance might slow me down. It did not. Denise Rowe met me in a glass office near the back of Maple Ridge Credit Union. She was in her 50s with silver-framed glasses and a stack of folders arranged so neatly I trusted her before she finished saying my name. Some people use neatness to hide confusion. Denise used it to keep confusion from winning. Mr. Bennett, she said, before we discuss details, I need to verify that you did not authorize this loan. I did not, and you did not visit this branch today. I was home with a dead fuel pump and a colder cup of coffee than any man deserves. She almost smiled. Then she opened the folder. The disbursement has not occurred. The file was flagged because the guarantor confirmation note did not match your account activity history. That was the first kind thing the system had done for me. What did not match? Your account has no recent branch visits, she said. No loan inquiry from your online profile. No appointments scheduled under your phone number. The confirmation was entered manually. Manually. That word sounded small until you imagined a hand using it. Denise turned the first page around. Mercer Hauling LLC. Commercial equipment loan. 2 used box trucks. 1 trailer. Personal guarantor Harold Bennett. My name sat there in black ink, calm as a thief at church. The amount was high enough to make my hands go still. If this had funded, I asked what would I be responsible for. If valid, the guarantor could be pursued if the borrower defaulted, Denise said. That is why this is on hold. She slid the signature page forward. I had signed my name tens of thousands of times in my life. Work orders, safety forms, school checks, county maintenance approvals in triplicate. A signature becomes a muscle. You know its rhythm even when your eyes are tired. This one looked close. Too close for comfort. The H leaned a little like mine. The Bennett ran fast the way mine did when I was signing too many maintenance approvals at the county yard. But the middle dip was wrong. The spacing was wrong. Whoever wrote it had studied the picture of my name, not the weight of my hand. Then I saw the address. It was not my house. It was an apartment complex on Brindle Creek Road, a place I had passed 100 times, but never entered. Where did this come from? I asked. Denise pointed to the corner of the page. Mobile notary stamp. I looked at the round seal and the commission number beneath it. So someone told a notary they were me. That is what we need to determine. She lifted one more sheet. It was a copy of my driver's license. Old address, old photo. Real enough to make the lie breathe. I need a copy of every page, I said. Denise nodded. That was when the fear changed shape. It stopped being panic and became a careful working list. Grant called before I reached my truck. That told me Lila had called him the second we hung up. I did not blame her for that. Marriage trains people to look sideways before they look down. But the timing told me something else, too. Grant was not surprised enough. Harold, he said, already warm, already wounded. I think this got twisted. I stood in the credit union parking lot with the loan packet under my arm. The building's glass doors reflected me back as a man in work boots holding his own name like evidence. Then untwisted. He laughed once the way men laugh when they want a hard thing to become social. You and I talked about helping the business. Remember at Lila's cookout, you said you believed in family. I said a man should not borrow more truck than he has work for. Silence. You were joking. I was not. I remembered that cookout clearly. Grant had stood by the grill with a paper plate in one hand, telling me about contracts that were almost signed routes that were almost secured customers who were almost ready. Almost is a dangerous place to build a business. It sounds close enough to step on until it drops you. Grant exhaled through his nose. Look, the loan officer needed a stronger guarantor. It is standard. The trucks get us contracts. Contracts get us cash flow. Cash flow lets Lila breathe. Everybody wins. Everybody. Another word people use when one person is being selected to carry the risk. Why was I not copied on the loan approval email? He came back too quickly. Because I was going to walk you through it after the conditional approval. Conditional on my signature. On your support. My signature is not a feeling, Grant. I heard a car pass behind me. The credit union doors opened and closed. People walked in carrying deposits, paychecks, ordinary errands. Nobody looked at me long enough to know I was standing there with a document that could make my retirement someone else's collateral. For the first time, his voice sharpened. Not much, but enough. You know how much stress Lila is under. She did not want to ask you again. Again. That word reached back through every quiet check I had written, every car repair I had covered, every grocery card I had slipped into Lila's purse after pretending I found it in a drawer. So you asked for her. I handled it, he said. No, you used me. He lowered his voice. Do not make me the villain because I am trying to keep your daughter from drowning. That was his cleanest trick. Put Lila in the water, put himself in the boat, and make me feel cruel for asking who drilled the hole. I opened the loan packet again. The mobile notary stamp sat near the bottom of the page, round and official looking. Who notarized this? Grant stopped breathing for half a second. Then he said, I do not remember. That was when I knew the next answer was not in Grant's mouth. It was in the stamp. Then I will ask the stamp, I said. He said my name twice before I ended the call. The second time sounded less like family and more like warning. The stamp read Alvarez Mobile Notary Services. There was a commission number, a county name, and an office address printed so small I had to put on my reading glasses in the truck. The office was 12 minutes away, tucked between a tax preparer and a laundromat in a strip mall where every sign had faded at a different speed. Mr. Alvarez did not look like a man who enjoyed surprises. He was maybe 60 square-shouldered, with a pressed blue shirt and a desk so clean it made Denise Rowe's office look casual. A framed certificate hung behind him. Next to it was a wall clock that ticked louder than it needed to. Mr. Bennett, he said, after I showed him the copy, that is my stamp. Then I need to know when you watched me sign. His eyes lifted from the paper to my face. I have never met you. That was the first answer all day that felt like fresh air. It also made the room colder. If Mr. Alvarez had never met me, then the stamp was not a misunderstanding sitting on the page. It was a witness that had been tricked into helping a lie wear a tie. He reached for a bound notary journal, not a computer, not a vague memory. A physical book with numbered pages and a black elastic strap around it. He handled it with the respect some men reserve for family Bibles. I keep a paper journal even though the state permits electronic backup, he said. Paper does not update itself after trouble starts. I liked him immediately. He found the date from the stamp and ran one finger down the page. Here, he said. The entry listed my name. Harold Bennett. Guarantor acknowledgement. Brindle Creek Road. 9:02 a.m. My stomach tightened. That is not my address. The journal says the signer presented a driver's license. Did you check the face? He looked offended, then tired. I checked the license. I checked the signature against the ID. The man wore a cap and glasses. He said he had recently had dental work and did not want to remove the mask because of swelling. It wasn't an excuse, just ordinary enough to work on a busy morning. That was what made it smart. Not brilliant, not cinematic. Smart in the small way fraud often is. It does not need to fool the world. It only needs to give one busy person a reason to keep moving. Do you have anything else? Mr. Alvarez turned the book. Beside the entry was a signature. Close again, wrong again. Then he tapped the appointment reference number. The request came through our booking form, he said. I can pull the appointment log. He reached for his keyboard. I watched his screen reflect in his glasses and realized the book had not given me the answer yet. It had given me the road to it. Whatever you find, I said, send it to me and to Denise Rowe at Maple Ridge. Mr. Alvarez nodded once. If someone used my journal, he said, I want it corrected. I went to Lila's house before Mr. Alvarez emailed the appointment log. That may sound backward. It probably was. But there are moments when evidence can wait 10 minutes and a daughter cannot. I needed to see her face before Grant had time to sand down the truth and hand her a smoother lie. Lila opened the door with her phone in her hand. She had been crying, but she had also been arguing. I could tell by the heat in her cheeks and the way her jaw was set. My daughter cried softly. She fought with her whole face. Dad, Grant says you misunderstood. I have the loan packet. Her eyes dropped to the folder. He said it was temporary. My name was temporary. She stepped back and let me in. Their kitchen looked like a life trying to pretend it was fine. A bright bowl of oranges on the counter. A school fundraiser magnet from a neighbor's child on the refrigerator. 2 unopened envelopes tucked half under a stack of takeout menus near the junk drawer. I saw them because I had spent a lifetime noticing what people push aside. The kitchen still had the little blue tile near the sink that Lila had picked because it reminded her of summers at the public pool. I had helped install that backsplash one Saturday while Grant was out pricing trucks. Standing there now, I felt how easily a home can hold old tenderness and new trouble in the same light. What are those? Lila followed my eyes and moved too fast. Nothing. Then leave them where they are. She stopped. I picked up the top envelope. Not a house notice, not a land paper, not anything dramatic enough for a movie. Just a credit card statement with a red stripe and a late fee warning on the outside. The second envelope was from an equipment supplier. Past due, Lila covered her mouth. I was going to tell you. After Grant got the trucks, that sentence told me the shape of the trap. The loan was not a step forward. It was a bridge thrown over a hole nobody wanted to measure. I had seen bad roads patched that way when budgets were thin. Cover the crack. Paint the line. Hope the first heavy rain does not tell the truth. Grant had made a family version of that mistake, except the road he wanted to drive over was my credit. Did you know my license copy was in the packet? She shook her head too quickly. Lila, her shoulders fell. Months ago, Grant needed a scan for the insurance quote. He said it would help list you as an emergency driver for one of the trucks if you ever helped us move equipment. Did you ask me? No, there was no performance in that answer. Just shame. He told me you wanted to keep the help private, she whispered. I looked at my daughter standing beside hidden bills and a story she had wanted badly enough to believe. Private is not the same as stolen. She looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time that day, I saw doubt turn in the right direction. Mr. Alvarez's email arrived while I was still in Lila's kitchen. The subject line was plain. Appointment log for Bennett acknowledgement. Lila stood beside me while I opened it on my phone. Grant was not there. That mattered. For the first time that day, my daughter was going to see a document before her husband explained it. The log was a 2-page PDF. Request submitted 7:43 p.m. previous evening. Requested by Mercer Hauling, LLC. Contact email Grant at mercerhauling.com. Preferred signing location, Brindle Creek Road Apartment Clubhouse. Signer name, Harold Bennett. Contact phone not mine. I read the number out loud. Lila's face changed. That's Grant's second phone. I did not ask why he had a second phone. That question belonged to their marriage, and for once, I was not going to pick up every broken thing in the room just because I could see it. I stayed with the document. That was harder than it sounds. A father's mind wants to run down every hallway at once. Debt lies, marriage, shame, safety. But proof has a pace. If you outrun it, people call your fear confusion. I had already heard that word once today. Not his business line, not the number printed on his cards. The second phone he kept in the console of his truck, the one he said was for dispatch apps and drivers who called too late. Are you sure? She nodded slowly. He told me not to answer it if it rang. There are lies that become visible only because somebody gives them a place to sit. That phone number sat between us on the screen, calm and complete. I forwarded the PDF to Denise Rowe. Then I called Mr. Alvarez on speaker. You found it, he asked. I found the email on the phone. There is more, he said. The payment for the appointment was made online. Lila gripped the counter. Whose card? A Mercer Hauling debit card, he said. Last 4 are in the receipt. He read the numbers. Lila closed her eyes. That's the business account, she said. The proof was no longer just near Grant. It was walking in his shoes. I had wanted a mistake to appear somewhere. A typo, a shared number, a clerk who copied the wrong email, something dull and fixable. Instead, every line of the log removed an exit. I thanked Mr. Alvarez and ended the call. Lila did not defend Grant right away. The silence was small, but it was new. "Dad," she said, "what happens now?" I looked back at the appointment log. Now we stop guessing. My phone buzzed before I could say more. "Denise." The credit union wanted to review the file with me immediately. I showed Lila the screen. "Come with me," I said. She looked toward the driveway, toward the life she had been defending from inside it. "I need to hear it from them," she said. "No," I said. "You need to hear it before Grant gets to explain it away." She nodded, and the nod was small enough that I almost missed it. But she picked up her purse. Before I left Lila's kitchen, I asked for her laptop. She hesitated. That was enough to tell me the old license copy had not arrived in Grant's hands by magic. "I am not asking to search your whole life," I said. "I am asking for the file he said was for insurance." The sentence mattered, because I did not want her to trade one kind of violation for another. Grant had crossed a line with my name. I was not going to cross one with her privacy just because I was angry. She brought the laptop from the small desk near the dining room window. The screen was smudged near the trackpad. A child sticker from some old community fair clung to one corner, half peeled. Ordinary details. They made the fraud uglier because it had grown inside a real home, not a criminal hideout. Lila opened a folder called Truck Insurance. Inside were quotes, vehicle photos, a mileage spreadsheet, and one scan named Harold_DL_old.pdf. The file date was 4 months earlier. I did not touch the keyboard. I let Lila click it open. My old license filled the screen. Old address, old photo. The same copy Denise had shown me at Maple Ridge. It is a strange thing to look at your own face and feel like it has been taken somewhere without you. The photo was mine, but the use of it was not. That difference was the whole crime in miniature. Lila covered her face with one hand. "I sent it to him," she said. "For what?" "He said the insurer needed backup driver information because you might help move a truck from auction." "Was I asked to drive a truck from auction?" "No." She dropped her hand. "I know." The words did not fix anything, but they stopped making me fight for the obvious. I asked her to show me the email. She found it in her sent folder after 2 searches. The timestamp matched a Monday evening 4 months back. Attached file, Harold_DL_old.pdf. Message, "Here is Dad's license scan. Please delete," after the quote. Please delete. Those 2 words would have been funny if they were not sitting inside a felony-shaped problem. The request above it was from Grant. "Need your dad's license for insurance backup. Faster if you send it. Do not bother him. He already said he is fine helping." There it was again, the borrowed yes. I forwarded the email to Denise and copied myself. Lila watched me do it. "Are they going to arrest him?" "I do not know." "Are you going to—" "I'm going to tell the truth." She flinched, but she did not argue. Outside, a truck door slammed in the driveway. Grant was home. And on my phone, the same license scan sat beside the loan packet, no longer a mystery, no longer a misunderstanding. Lila did not move toward the door. That was the first decision she made without asking Grant what it meant. I did not praise her for it. Some moments are too early for praise. I simply stood beside her and waited for the door to open. Grant opened the kitchen door with his keys in his hand. He saw me first. Then he saw Lila's laptop open on the table, my old license on the screen, and the color left his face before anger could hide it. "What is this?" he said. I did not answer him. My phone was ringing again. Denise Rowe. I put it on speaker. "Mr. Bennett." Denise said, "I received the notary appointment log and the email showing how the old license copy was sent. Based on what you have provided and what is already in the file, I have placed the loan disbursement on fraud review hold." "Does that mean no money has gone out?" I asked. "Correct," she said. "The disbursement has not occurred. The file is restricted pending review of the guarantor authorization." Those words landed like a door closing. Lila gripped the back of a chair. Grant stepped closer. "Denise, this is a misunderstanding. Harold agreed to help. He is upset now, but this is a family matter." Denise's voice did not change. "Mr. Mercer, I cannot discuss the file with you on Mr. Bennett's phone. The hold note has been entered. I am sending Mr. Bennett a copy of the review notice now." My email chimed a moment later. Fraud review hold note. I opened it where everyone could see. It did not accuse anyone. That was why it had power. It listed the file number, my name, as disputed guarantor, the mobile notary concerned the old license copy, and the instruction that no loan funds were to be released until identity and authorization were reviewed. Grant stared at the screen. "You do not understand what you just did," he said to me. "I understand that my name was used without me. You are going to sink us over paperwork?" Lila turned toward him. "Grant, the appointment request came from your company email." He looked at her, then not me. "You gave him my business before I could explain," he said. "I saw the log. You saw what your father wanted you to see." I closed the laptop slowly. I had spent 30 years supervising road crews, and I knew the sound of a man trying to move a barricade by renaming it. "Denise," I said, "what do you need from us?" "Come to the branch," she said. "Bring any messages, the old license, email, and do not sign anything related to this loan outside the review process." Grant laughed once. It was not humor. It was panic wearing a mask. "So now Maple Ridge is running my marriage." Lila flinched, but she did not apologize. I told Denise we were coming. Grant followed us to the driveway, talking about equipment deposits, late fees, employees, and how I was choosing pride over family. I got into my truck. Lila got into the passenger seat. Grant did not call me. He called her. Her phone lit up before I backed out. She answered on speaker, and his voice filled the cab. "Lila, listen to me. Your father's trying to ruin us." She looked at the fraud review hold note on my phone, then at the house behind us. For the first time, she did not answer right away. Maple Ridge Credit Union had a review room behind the teller line. It was not dramatic. 4 chairs, 1 table, a wall clock, a loud printer, and a framed poster about protecting member information. Somehow, that made it worse. A thing that could have ruined my credit and tied my retirement to Grant's equipment loan was being handled under fluorescent lights beside plain folders. Denise met us with the fraud review hold note already printed. She gave 1 copy to me and 1 to Lila. "I want to be careful with language," she said. "This is not a final determination today, but the hold is active and the file cannot fund while the authorization is under review." Lila nodded like she was learning how to breathe in smaller amounts. Denise set a second page on the table. "After your last email, I checked the document intake record. The guarantor packet was logged after it was left at our after-hours document slot. We pulled the exterior camera for the relevant window." She turned the page toward us. It was a still image printed in grayscale. The camera angle looked down across the side parking lot. The branch sign blurred in the distance. The document slot was on the wall near a light pole. A truck sat 2 spaces away, angled like the driver had not planned to stay long. The plate was not readable. Denise said that before either of us could ask. "We cannot identify the plate from this image," she said, "but the timestamp aligns with the document drop, and the vehicle appears consistent with the description you provided for Mr. Mercer's truck." I looked at Lila. She had both hands around the paper. "That is Grant's truck," she whispered. "Take your time," Denise said. Lila shook her head. "The toolbox. The dent above the rear wheel. He backed into a concrete post at the yard last winter." I did not touch the page. I wanted to put my finger on the truck and make it confess. But a photograph is not a person. It does not explain motive. It just refuses to move when someone lies beside it. Denise placed a short intake note next to the image. "Packet received through document slot. Logged for commercial lending review. Guarantor page included." There it was. Not a rumor. Not me forgetting. A packet came in. A truck was outside. My old license was inside. My name sat on the guarantor line. Lila read the note 3 times. "He told me he was not anywhere near the branch," she said. "When did he tell you that?" Denise asked. "On the phone just now, and last night. He said he had to be at the south job site early because one of the drivers was late." Denise wrote that down without comment. I heard myself ask the next question before I had fully decided to say it. Where was Grant supposed to be that morning? Lila looked from the truck image to the hold note. The room changed around that question. It stopped being about one signature and became a map of a whole morning. She opened her messages. "He texted me from the job thread," she said. "I still have it." Lila's hands shook while she searched her phone. Not wildly, just enough that the screen missed her thumb. I almost reached over to help, then stopped myself. This part had to be hers. She had defended Grant's story because it arrived wrapped in marriage bills and fear. Now she had to unwrap it herself. She found the thread under a group name I did not recognize. Mercer Hauling, Ridgeway Crew. There were messages from that morning. Short work messages. The kind that look harmless until time makes them talk. One driver had written that the loader was blocked in. Another asked who had the fuel card. Grant's message sat beneath them. Start without me. I am running behind. Be there after I handle one stop. Lila stared at the timestamp. That was before the packet was logged, she said. Denise leaned forward, but did not take the phone. May I note the thread name and time? Lila nodded. Then a second message appeared farther down the same thread. Tell Lila I was on site if she asks. I do not need Dad stirred up before the loan clears. For a few seconds nobody spoke. I had spent the day bracing for cleverness. A forged signature, a notary appointment. A license scan moved from one purpose to another. But this was blunt. A sentence from a man who believed everyone around him would stay in the places he assigned them. Dad stirred up. Not Harold, not Mr. Bennett, not the man whose retirement could be pulled under a commercial equipment loan. Dad, as if the family title made my consent unnecessary. Lila lowered the phone. He told me he was already at Ridgeway, she said. He called around lunch and said the morning was a mess. Denise asked, Did you see him in person that day? Lila nodded slowly. He came home before noon. From the job site, that is what he said. She looked embarrassed, before she looked angry, and that hurt to watch. He was wearing the same gray Mercer shirt he wore when he left, she said. Clean. No dust on his boots. I remember because I asked why he was home if the crew was short, and he said he had to change paperwork before a lender deadline. The words lender deadline made the review room feel smaller. Denise wrote that down too. I wanted to ask Lila why she had not questioned it then. I did not because I knew the answer. People question strangers. They explain family. Grant had counted on that. Lila scrolled again, slower now. Her face changed because each message moved an old memory into its correct place. I told you he would not do this, she said. I kept my voice low. I know. No, Dad, I said you were confused. That was the first time she gave the word back to herself instead of handing it to me. Denise set her pen down. The next step is a formal review meeting, she said. Mr. Mercer will be asked to attend. Lila looked at the phone in her lap. She was finally seeing what she had defended. Denise printed the review appointment notice while we were still sitting there. The paper came out ordinary except for what it meant. Commercial Loan Fraud Review. Attendees requested Harold Bennett, Lila Bennett Mercer, Grant Mercer. Documentation to be reviewed, guarantor authorization mobile notary record appointment. Booking log document intake, record identity copy-related communications. At the bottom in smaller print, it said the disbursement hold would remain active until the review was completed. I read that line twice. No money had gone out. My name was still exposed, but the door to the loan was not open anymore. Denise slid the notice into a folder. I will send this to the email addresses on file, she said. Mr. Bennett, send anything relevant, but do not argue the facts by text if Mr. Mercer contacts you. Keep the records clean. That was good advice. It was also hard advice, because Grant had already started. Lila's phone buzzed on the table. Then mine, then hers again. She turned her screen so I could see a photo of a page on his kitchen counter. At the top, he had written consent clarification. Below it, in rush typing, was a paragraph saying I had agreed to guarantee the Mercer hauling equipment loan before the notary appointment, that any confusion was only about dates, and that I did not want the credit union to delay funding. There was a blank line for my signature. The date line was already filled in for the morning of the notary appointment. Lila's face tightened. He wants you to sign this. Before I could answer, Grant called her. She looked at Denise. Denise said, You may answer if you want to. I am not part of that call. Lila put it on speaker anyway. Grant did not say hello. Tell him to sign the clarification, he said. That is all this needs. Nobody loses anything if he signs. I looked at the printed review notice on the table. You're Grant. Lila said, You cannot ask Dad to sign something dated before a meeting he says he never attended. It is not backdated. It is clarifying what he already agreed to. Then why did you fill in the old date? Silence. That silence was different from Lila's earlier silence. Hers had been grief trying to stand. His was calculation looking for another door. He found one. Lila, if this loan dies, Mercer Hauling dies with it. You know what that does to us. You know what bills are sitting on the counter. Your father has a pension. He can absorb a signature. We cannot absorb a failed loan. There it was finally said without decoration. Not that I had agreed. That I could absorb it. I leaned toward the phone. I am not signing that. Grant's voice sharpened. Then you better be ready to explain in that review room why you are choosing to destroy your daughter's life. Lila closed her eyes. When she opened them, she was looking at the blank signature line on his photo, not at me. And I knew the next fight would not be about whether the document was false. It would be about whether love required me to make it true. I did not answer Grant right away. That was not weakness. It was the only way I knew to keep my anger from doing his work for him. The phone sat in the middle of the review table. Lila was still looking at the photo he had sent, the page with consent clarification typed at the top, and my empty signature line waiting at the bottom, like a trap with fresh paint. Denise kept her hands folded. She did not interrupt. She had already told us she was not part of the call, and I respected that. This was not the credit union arguing with Grant. This was me deciding whether my name still belonged to me. Grant, I said, I am not signing anything dated for a morning I was not there. You are making this bigger than it is. I am not signing anything that says confusion when the problem is consent. Lila looked up at that. Grant breathed hard into the phone. It is one clarification. Then clarify it truthfully, I said. Write that I did not attend the appointment. Write that I did not authorize the guarantor page. Write that the signature is disputed. I will confirm that. He said nothing. There are silences that answer better than words. I turned Lila's phone toward myself without touching it, just enough to see the page again. The date line was already filled in. The signature line was blank. There was no witness, no notary, no credit union form number, no plain explanation of what debt I would be agreeing to carry. Just vague language meant to turn a lie into a misunderstanding. That blank line was the proof object in front of me, not because it showed what Grant had done yesterday, because it showed what he still wanted from me today. Dad, Lila said quietly, do not sign it. Grant heard her. Lila, stay out of it. Her face tightened, but she did not shrink. It is my father, and it is our business. No, she said, it is his name. The words hit the room softly, but they hit. I saw the cost of them on her face. She was not suddenly free of fear. She was standing in it. I looked at Denise. Can you print the photo he sent? I wanted included as an unsigned request. Denise nodded. I can add it to the review materials as a communication received today. It will be noted as unsigned. Good, I said. Grant's voice sharpened again. You people have no idea what this does. The equipment company will not just shrug and move on. If Maple Ridge stops this loan, they will sue. They will come after Mercer Hauling for the deposit for delay for all of it. Lila closed her eyes for 1 second. I knew he had found the right word to scare her. Sue. Not filed. Not proven. Just threatened the way he had used every other unfinished disaster to push her toward obedience. I kept my hand away from the blank signature line. Then we talk about what is true before anyone talks about saving it, I said. Grant arrived 20 minutes late to the formal review meeting. He wore the gray Mercer Hauling shirt Lila had described clean enough that the detail felt cruel. He did not look at the folder on the table first. He looked at Lila as if her face would tell him which version of the story still worked. Denise gave no speech. She simply set out the evidence packet, one stack at a time. That order mattered. If she had dumped it all at once, Grant could have called it confusion. Piece by piece, it became a path. Each page showed where my name had traveled without me. The loan packet came first. Commercial equipment loan. Mercer Hauling LLC. Guarantor page with my printed name, my disputed signature, and the old driver license copy behind it. Next came the notary journal copy from Alvarez Mobile Notary Services. Signer name Harold Bennett, location Brindle Creek Road, time 9:02 a.m. I had never been to Brindle Creek Road. Then Denise placed the booking log beside it. Request submitted at 7:43 p.m. the previous evening. Requested by Mercer Hauling LLC. Contact email Grant at mercerhauling.com. Contact phone Grant's second phone. Payment Mercer Hauling debit card. Grant shifted in his chair. Mobile notary bookings get entered by staff, he said. You cannot know who typed what. Denise did not argue. She placed the receipt beside the log. Then came the document intake note from Maple Ridge and the exterior camera still. Packet received through the after-hours document slot. Timestamp aligned with the drop. A truck outside plate unreadable, but with the toolbox and rear wheel dent Lila had named before Grant entered the room. Finally, Denise placed the unsigned consent clarification photo at the edge of the packet. Blank signature line. Old date typed in. No signature. For clarity, Denise said, we are reviewing whether Mr. Bennett authorized the guarantor obligation before the file can proceed. This meeting is a credit union review of our own file. That mattered. It kept the room from becoming theater. Grant leaned back. Then review the fact that Harold helps family. He has helped before. Everybody knows that. Helping is not the same as signing, I said. You knew I needed the truck. I knew you wanted a truck. You knew Lila was scared. That one landed closer. I looked at my daughter. She did not look away. I knew my daughter was scared, I said. I did not know my name was being used to make her silence useful. Denise slid one page out of the loan packet and turned it toward Lila. The top said guarantor acknowledgement. I had seen the line already. I had felt it in my stomach at the first meeting. But Lila had not read it out loud. Until a person hears the obligation in their own voice, denial can still pretend the words are smaller than they are. I pushed the page gently toward her. Look, I said, read the guarantor statement out loud. Lila did not pick up the page at first. She looked at it the way a person looks at a bill they already know is too high, hoping the number might change if they wait one more second. Grant spoke before she could. She does not need to read bank language like it is scripture. Denise's eyes moved to him. It is the obligation you submitted with the loan packet. Submitted. Not discussed, not imagined, submitted. Lila reached for the page. Her voice was low when she started, but it did not break. The undersigned guarantor agrees to be personally responsible for repayment of the indebtedness of Mercer Hauling LLC under the commercial equipment loan if the borrower fails to pay as agreed. She stopped. The room seemed to hold the sentence after she released it. Personally responsible. Repayment. If the borrower fails, those were not family words. They were not favor words. They were not the soft words Grant had used in my daughter's kitchen. They were the actual words, the ones that would have followed me home, sat in my mail, and waited for a missed payment. Lila looked at Grant. You told me Dad was just helping with approval. Grant rubbed both hands over his face. That is what a guarantor does. No, she said. You told me it was a formality. It would have been. If everything went right, everything was going to go right. I heard the old rhythm in him, the one that made a promise sound like proof. Denise stayed quiet. She let Lila's question do the work. Did Dad say yes? Lila asked. Grant looked at me, then at the packet, then back at her. He would have. That was the first crack wide enough for the truth to show its face. Lila whispered, Grant. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. I was trying to keep us alive. The business gets that truck, we take the larger county maintenance subcontract, cash flow turns around, and I make every payment. Your dad never feels it. By the time he found out, it would be working. He would be mad, then he would forgive it. There it was. Not a mistake. Not my memory. Not a clerk. A plan built on my future forgiveness. I felt something inside me go still. It was not relief. It was the end of a long argument I'd been forced to have with shadows. Lila put the page down carefully. You let me call him confused, she said. Grant looked away. You let me say that to his face. He did not answer. That silence did more damage than any confession could have, because it left her standing alone with the sentence she had spoken to me. I wanted to comfort her. I also wanted her to feel the full weight of it, because love without truth is just another kind of cover. Denise gathered the guarantor page back into the packet. I have what I need to update the loan file, she said. Grant's head snapped up. Update it how? Denise did not rush her answer. She opened a fresh page on top of the packet and wrote the file number by hand before she spoke. I watched the pen move because it gave my eyes somewhere to go, besides Grant's face. The disbursement remains stopped, she said. No funds have left Maple Ridge on this loan. I heard Lila breathe out. It was not forgiveness. It was the sound of a disaster contained before it became larger than the room. Denise continued. Based on Mr. Bennett's dispute, the review materials, and Mr. Mercer's statements today, this file cannot proceed with Mr. Bennett as guarantor. Grant pushed his chair back an inch. You are killing the loan. I am saying this version of the file cannot fund, Denise said. If Mercer Hauling wants to continue, you can speak with commercial lending about applying under your own credit or with a properly authorized guarantor. That would be a separate review. That takes time. Yes. The equipment company will not wait. Denise did not soften the answer. That is between Mercer Hauling and the equipment company. Grant looked at Lila, but she was looking at the closed review note Denise had begun to type into her system. I could not see the full screen, and I was not going to pretend I could. What I saw was enough file held guarantor authorization, disputed no disbursement, released. Plain words. Life-saving words. If you have ever watched paperwork, try to become a chain. Harold T. Grant said, and it was the first time all day he used my name like it belonged to me. You can still fix this. No, I said. I can stop carrying what I did not agree to carry. You think that helps, Lila? I turned toward my daughter before I answered him. It helps her know where the floor is. Lila's eyes filled, but she did not cry. Not yet. She had been crying inward all day, and sometimes the body waits until the danger passes before it lets anything out. Denise printed the review hold update and handed me a copy. It was not a victory letter. It did not declare guilt. It did not punish anyone. It simply confirmed the only fact I needed. In that moment, the loan had not funded, and my disputed guarantor role would not be used to release money. I folded the page once and put it in my folder. Grant stood. So I either qualify a loan or lose the truck. Denise answered evenly. Those are the available paths through Maple Ridge. He waited for Lila to object. She did not. That was the real end of the meeting. Not the printer, not the note. Not Grant pushing his chair under the table too hard. The end was my daughter letting the consequence stay where it belonged. Outside the review room, she touched my sleeve. "Dear," she said, "I do not know what happens when we go home." I looked at the folder in my hand, then at the woman my daughter had become in one afternoon of terrible truth. Then tomorrow, I said, we start with what is actually on the counter. Lila did not ask me to take her home right away. We sat in my truck outside Maple Ridge Credit Union, while the late afternoon light turned the windshield gold and showed every fingerprint on the glass. She held the review hold update in both hands, not reading it anymore, just keeping it close, like a person holds a map after realizing she has been walking in the wrong direction. "I do not know what is on the counter," she said. "Then we start there." "Dad, I am not asking you to pay it." I looked at her because that mattered. "I know," she swallowed. "But part of me wants to ask." That is the ugly part. It was not ugly to say it. It was honest. Ugly is when fear dresses itself as entitlement and calls the other person selfish for having a boundary. "West Lila," I said, "I will help you see the truth. I will help you sort bills. I will sit with you while you call creditors. I will drive you to any meeting where you need a witness. But I will not cover a forged loan, and I will not make Grant's lie cheaper for him." She nodded, but tears finally came. Quiet ones. No performance. No collapse. Just the pressure of the day finding a place to leave her body. "I should have believed you sooner," she said. "Believe the paper now," I said. "Then believe your own eyes next time." I drove her back to the house. Grant's truck was gone. That absence made the kitchen feel louder than any argument. On the counter were the things he had used to keep her afraid supplier notices, a late equipment deposit invoice, a fuel card statement, 2 envelopes from a commercial insurance company, and a yellow pad where Grant had written numbers in columns that did not add up cleanly. Lila stood in the doorway as if the papers might accuse her. "Do not touch anything yet," I said. She looked scared. "Not because you are in trouble," I said. "Because we need to know what is real before anyone moves it." I found a clean notebook in the drawer. On the first page I wrote 3 headings. Household, business, my name. Then I drew a line under the last one. "Anything with my name goes in this pile," I said. "Anything with your name goes in this pile. Anything only in Grant's or Mercer Hauling's name goes there." It was not heroic work. It was paperwork. But sometimes that is how a family stops bleeding one envelope, one date, one obligation at a time. I wrote the date at the top and the file number from Denise's review hold update beneath it. Feelings had been used against Lila all week. A file number did not plead. It simply made the mess traceable. Lila picked up the first bill. "Can I come over tomorrow morning?" she asked. "Alone." She looked toward the empty driveway. Alone. Lila came over the next morning with a canvas bag full of papers and eyes that looked like she had slept in pieces. She did not bring Grant. I did not ask where he was. Some questions are just another way of letting the wrong person sit at the table. We spread everything across my dining room by category. Household bills on the left. Mercer hauling documents on the right. Anything with my name went in the middle where both of us could see it. That middle pile was smaller than I feared. That did not make it harmless. Small is not safe, I told her. She looked at the few pages in the middle. It feels like it should be over, because there are not many. That is how paperwork tricks people, I said. One page can carry more weight than a drawer full of bills if it has the wrong name on it. The credit union review hold update went into a red folder. The guarantor dispute notes went behind it. Then the old license email the notary booking logged the camera. Still the job thread screenshots Lila had forwarded to Denise and a copy of the unsigned consent clarification photo. On the tab I wrote credit file correction. Lila watched the pen. It sounds so clean when you write it like that. It is not clean, I said. It is just named. That was the first lesson I wanted her to keep. A named problem can still hurt you, but an unnamed one gets to move around in the dark and pretend it is every problem at once. We made a checklist. Call Maple Ridge for written confirmation of disputed guarantor status. Ask when the credit file notation would be corrected or prevented. Pull my credit report after the review note was entered. Save every communication in one folder. Do not discuss facts by phone unless a summary email follows. Write down who said what when and from which number. Do not send identification scans without a written reason. Lila wrote the next line herself. Separate household bills from Grant's business debts. She stared at those words for a long time. I thought keeping quiet was loyalty, she said. I let the sentence sit. She looked up. He would tell me not to worry, Dad. Not to embarrass him. Not to make things bigger. And I thought that meant I was protecting my marriage. Sometimes secrecy protects a wound, I said. Sometimes it protects the hand that keeps opening it. She pressed her fingers to the bridge of her nose. I made you prove you are not confused. You were scared. That does not erase it. No, I said. It tells us where to start repairing. We did not solve her marriage that morning. We did not fix Mercer hauling. We did not turn one folder into a happy ending. We did something smaller and more useful. We stopped calling pressure loyalty. Before she left, I made a copy of the checklist for her and kept the original in the red folder. That was not because I did not trust her. It was because trust had to grow a spine now. 30 days later, Maple Ridge Credit Union mailed me a letter in a plain white envelope. I knew it was coming because Denise had told me to expect written confirmation after the internal review steps were closed. Still, I carried it to the kitchen table before opening it. Some papers deserve a flat surface. The letter did not shout. It did not use the kind of language people imagine when they want a story to punish someone neatly. It said the guarantor authorization tied to my name had been marked disputed and removed from the active loan file. It said no funds had been disbursed under that file with me as guarantor. It said Mercer Hauling would need to submit a separate application under proper authorization if it wished to continue. At the bottom was Denise Rowe's name. I put the letter in the red folder behind the review hold update. Then I wrote the date received on the corner. It was a habit from road work where a repair not written down can disappear under the next storm. A family problem is not so different. Then I called Lila. She answered on the second ring. It came, I said. She was quiet. And my name is off the active guarantor file. No money went out under me. I heard her breathe. Grant got his answer too, CQ, she said. I did not ask for details. She gave them anyway because part of healing is learning which truths no longer need to be hidden. Maple Ridge would only talk to him about applying under Mercer Hauling's own credit, she said. He tried. They wanted updated statements, tax records, proof of deposits, and a new review. The equipment company would not hold the truck. What did he say? That everyone abandoned him. I looked at the folder on the table. Everyone did not sign for him. Lila gave a small sound. Not a laugh. Not quite. I am learning the difference. She told me she had opened a separate checking account for her paycheck and had started sending household bills from her own email. She said it like she expected me to call it small. That is not small, I said. It feels small. So does a key, I said. Until you need a door. After we hung up, I went back through the folder, the way careful people check a latch twice. The old license scan receipt was there printed from Lila's email account. 4 months earlier. Subject line about insurance backup. Attached file Harold_DL_old.pdf. That small receipt bothered me more than the bigger documents, because the bigger documents looked dangerous. This one looked ordinary. A daughter asking for a scan. A father sending it because trust is supposed to make simple things simple. I slid the receipt into a plastic sleeve, not because I wanted to preserve anger, because I wanted to remember how easily access can become authority in the wrong hands. Then I wrote one more note on the folder cover. Ask before using my name. I underlined ask twice, not because I had become suspicious of everybody, because I had finally learned that love without a question can become a tool in someone else's hand. People think the worst part of a forged signature is the ink. It is not. Ink is only the part you can point to. The worst part is the little theft underneath it. Someone decides that your history with them is close enough to consent. Your kindness becomes a shortcut. Your age becomes an excuse. Your quiet becomes a blank line they believe they can fill. Grant did not empty my bank account. He did something that could have followed me longer. He borrowed my name and expected love to pay the interest. That is why the closed guarantor note stayed in my desk drawer even after the review was done. Not on display, not framed like a trophy, just filed where I could find it if another envelope came. Another lender called or another person decided the easiest signature was the one they did not have to ask for. Lila came by most Saturdays after that. Sometimes we worked on the folder. Sometimes we did not. Some mornings she brought grocery receipts and questions about separating household bills from business debts. Some mornings she brought coffee and sat on the porch without talking. I learned not to fill every silence with advice. She had enough people telling her what fear required. What she needed from me was a place where truth did not have to hurry. There were days she defended him again in small ways. Not the forgery, not the loan, but the fear underneath it. She would say he was under pressure, that the business had been almost there, that one good contract might have changed everything. I did not argue with every sentence. I only asked, did pressure give him permission? By the third time, she answered herself. Grant and I did not become enemies in some dramatic way. Real life is rarely that tidy. He called twice. I answered once. He said I had made everything harder. I told him no, I had only stopped making it easier to lie. That was the last full conversation we had for a while. I do not know what every family should do in a moment like that. I only know what saved mine from getting worse. We separated help from permission. We separated fear from fact. We separated my daughter's pain from her husband's debt. And I learned to say a sentence I should have known years earlier. You can love someone and still require them to ask. If Lila had asked me for help with a bill, I would have listened. If Grant had asked me to review a loan as a guarantor, I would have said no, but I would have said it to his face. What I could not accept was being turned into paperwork after the decision had already been made. So I kept the closed guarantor note, not as revenge, as a boundary with a file number. That file number mattered more than my anger. Anger fades or grows teeth depending on the day. A record stays the same size. It lets you be calm without being careless, because family help begins with a question. And if someone has to borrow your name without asking maybe what they want, was never help at all. The warning in this story is painfully practical. Identity theft inside a family can feel impossible, because the first instinct is to explain it away. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe someone meant to ask. Maybe the bank has it wrong. But name signatures, guarantor pages, notary logs, and loan files are not feelings. They are records. Real financial harm often begins when a trusted person treats your clean name as a resource they can borrow. If a document carries your name and you did not consent, take it seriously early. Anger may be justified, but records will protect you better. Family help starts with permission. Anything else is not help. It is use. This story was dramatized and edited from real public dispute patterns and official source research. Details were changed and combined for privacy and storytelling. This is not legal, medical, financial, or professional advice.